All right, just into our newsroom. Police have discovered the remains of a New Mexico woman who's been missing for nearly a year. The body of Melissa Casillas, an assistant at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, a nuclear security facility, was discovered in a national forest about 70 miles from her home. Police say they also recovered a gun near her body. Casillas first reported missing last June when she didn't show up for work. Her purse, her phone, and her ID all left at home. You probably remember this story because Casillas is one of those several scientists and military service members who have either unexpectedly died or gone missing just within the last few years. Police say an investigation into her death is now underway.
New police body cam footage may be shedding light on just what happened to missing Air Force General William McCaslin when he just vanished from his New Mexico home. This was in late February. No sign of him since. The 68-year-old once served as the commander of research for the Air Force Research Laboratory, which has long been rumored to have ties to top-secret UFO research projects, even the alleged Roswell crash. And this new body cam footage recorded just a few hours after McCaslin vanished, an unidentified female caller speaks to the officer investigating his disappearance, claiming that she not only worked with the general, but she had dinner with him the night before he disappeared. She says they weren't alone. Apparently, members of Space Force, which tracks unidentified objects like UFOs, were also there. She also said McCaslin seemed to be acting out of character. Take a listen.
I was shocked this morning when I saw the alert because what I noticed Thursday evening is he wasn't his usual self. He was kind of spacey and quiet.
He wasn't his usual self. The caller also filled the officer in on just who McCaslin was and why it was so important to find him.
Right. Does he carry like a security clearance or anything like that?
He has a very classified security clearance. He was the head of Air Force Research Lab. To the point, the man's names are in the UFO documents that are recently been released. Okay. He's in that in-depth, so he has a very high security clearance.
So what's odd about this is that before this body cam ever rolled, McCaslin's wife posted a plea for help, where she said her missing husband only had, quote, very commonly held clearances since retiring from the Air Force 13 years ago. Though if the caller's claims are to be believed, the missing general may have been more involved in that top secret work than his wife realized. But does it explain McCaslin's disappearance? Joining me now for a closer look is the deputy science editor at the Daily Mail, Chris Malore, who has been covering this story since the beginning. Chris, welcome to the show. A lot to get into. So if the caller's claims are to be believed, McCaslin met with Space Force before he vanished. Do we have any idea why they met? Has Space Force commented on this alleged meeting?
Thank you for having me. Space Force has not commented on this at this point. However, what we do know from the caller, who is still unnamed, so we don't know the validity of the claims. However, this person did say that they were a member or worked with General McCaslin at the Kirtland Partnership. That is a nonprofit which deals with the Air Force base that McCaslin formerly commanded, and also works in the community to basically grow the base's assets, their influence. And so meeting with Space Force is heavily involved at Kirtland Air Force Base. It is a major national security complex. So for McCaslin to still be involved to that extent definitely raises questions about the level of clearance he still had.
Yeah, what about the discrepancy there? McCaslin's wife said he had commonly held security clearances. That caller claims he had a high-level clearance. What do you make of that?
Well, in the realm of high security military apparatus, you have what's called compartmentalization. We've talked to a number of congressmen and also former intelligence officers within the FBI, and they all agree that many times you have high-ranking officials cannot tell their loved ones, their partners, anyone in their family what it is they're doing. Okay. So it is not unheard of for loved ones to simply not know what what their loved ones are doing. In this case, being General McCaslin, his wife may literally not have had any idea what he was still connected to.
That makes sense. How does his disappearance fit in with the other missing or dead officials allegedly connected to top secret work, Chris?
Well, this is the fascinating part. McCaslin's disappearance is the latest that we know of in a string of deaths and disappearances. Right. But most importantly, the disappearances, he seems to be the linchpin, because when you look back at the general's history, especially his military history, all of the other disappearances, most of them being in nuclear research. We've had government contractors, administrative assistants, and other staff on hand at many of these facilities throughout New Mexico. The general worked or had influence over those positions. And all of these people disappeared in almost the identical fashion as the general. They walked out of their homes. They had no electronics, no way of tracing them, and simply vanished off the face of the earth within the last year.
It's so bizarre. I do want to play some body cam footage of the police interviewing McCaslin's wife the day he disappeared. And then I'll talk to you right after, Chris.
Sure.
Today, he had taken a drug that the doctor prescribed last night that was supposed to help with sleep. With weight gain, he's lost about 20 pounds for no reason, and with anxiety.
So his wife mentioned a medical condition. With that said, the anonymous caller said he was acting differently the night she met him. Do we know anything more about that possible condition he may have been suffering from?
Well, what we know from previously released 911 calls that his wife, Susan Wilkerson, made before officers arrived, he had, according to his wife, complained of his brain, quote unquote, deteriorating. He was worried of some sort of change in his cognitive well-being. He was reportedly under doctor's care and receiving tests, but no official diagnosis. So it's hard to say if he was legitimately suffering from any type of cognitive decline or not at the current time.
So it really just seems like just as many questions than answers tonight as we try to get to the bottom of where this general disappeared. Chris Malloy, thank you so much. Please come back soon, and hopefully we get more answers. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
39-year-old Matthew Sullivan. He died of an accidental drug overdose in 2024, just weeks before he was scheduled to be interviewed by lawmakers about UFOs. Sullivan was reportedly a colleague of David Grush. Grush is the former Air Force intelligence officer turned whistleblower, and Grush claims the U.S. government has a top secret program working to reverse engineer spacecraft of non-human origin. During his first network television interview right here on this show, Grush told me that he felt he was being threatened for blowing the whistle.
I had some unique things happen in my personal life that, were some of the causal factors for me to file a complaint, some things that my wife and I had noticed, some intimidation.
So is it possible that that's what happened to Matthew Sullivan? And what about the other missing scientists who held high security clearances and who all either died or mysteriously disappeared? Our next guests have some unique insight. Joining us is University of Albany physics professor Matthew Zhadagas. He's a physicist focused on dark matter and UFO research. Also joining us is veteran television producer and author Miguel Sancho. His new book, Evidence of the Extraordinary, takes readers inside UFO investigations. Great to have you both with us. Miguel, I'm going to start with you because you just spoke with David Grush about the Matthew Sullivan case. David Grush knew Matthew Sullivan. Does he think anything fishy happened here, that this should be investigated?
Well, it's been good to see you, and thank you so much for having me. I know David Grush professionally. We're not best of friends, but we've stayed in touch ever since he gave that interview to News Nation through Ross Coulthard, as you know. And I reached out to him today and just had a relatively brief chat asking him, if anything, what he knows about Matthew Sullivan. He confirmed that they were close friends. There's been, as you know, some discussion about exactly what the nature and extent of their relationship was. But he said he is being very cautious, as is his nature. He's a very cautious, very discreet, and I would say very honorable man. And he's waiting for the right time to go public with what he knows about the relationship and what he thinks about Mr. Sullivan's untimely death. He did say that in terms of connections to other cases on this list, he doesn't see an immediate connection with all the other dozen or so tragic disappearances and deaths, but he does find the McCaslin case, which is kind of the granddaddy
the
of them
General
all.
McCaslin, yeah. He is very mysterious.
He considered that very concerning. And as we go through these, I think it's very important to kind of take them in isolation before stretching and embracing some overarching grand unified theory of everything. Many things can be true, as you often say. Some of them can be accidental. Some of them can be suicides. Some of them could be foul play that has nothing to do with UFOs or conspiracies.
Right.
Some of them could have foul play involved with foreign adversaries.
Matthew, what's your take on it all? I mean, obviously, we've got members of Congress who've been very concerned, who've come on this show and talked about the fact that they want this investigated. The FBI, in fact, and NASA are investigating. President Trump has called for an investigation. Do you think, I mean, some of these people on this list, clearly, it doesn't look like they were part of some conspiracy, but others, you know, to Miguel's point, General McCaslin especially, these are very mysterious.
Yes, I think David Grush said it very well, as Miguel just quoted, that I think there's a lot of nuance here where there could be a there on very particular cases, but it's also possible that there's sometimes conflation as well. So I think it's important to realize that there may be some cases where it's a much stronger possibility that there's some sort of nefarious connection, but we have to be very careful not to conflate all different cases together, right, because there might be different causes.
And Miguel, David Grush did make it clear, both in my interview with me and in his interview with Ross Coulthart, he had been threatened.
No, and
repeatedly.
Yeah. And his claims were taken seriously enough by the Inspector General of the intelligence community to verify and to legitimize his whistleblower complaint. So he's not just making this up. He's not just sitting in a chair spouting off or fantasizing. And, you know, as we know, there are many cases in which some version of a sinister theory or something, right, has indeed have been at least partially true. So even though, you know, grand conspiracy theories require one to believe a stack of, you know, improbable possibilities, I mean, just look what's the recent most thinking about Havana syndrome, which we were told, you know, for years was
nothing.
A mass psychosis, right? Well, just in the recent months.
Now it looks like it's something.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And people are taking it seriously and no longer writing it off as it was just in people's heads.
By the way, it was the government who was saying it was nothing for many, many years. And it's now the government admitting, at least some members, we had it wrong. There is something to the Havana syndrome. Matthew, you are an expert on UFOs and physics. You have gone on the record taking on skeptics and saying, for example, the famous video of from 2004, the Nimitz Tic Tac video, cannot be debunked, that this is, in fact, not some man-made analogy or natural weather phenomenon. You think this is suspicious as an unidentified flying object. Why?
That's because there have been intensive studies made, so including by some of my colleagues like Professor Kevin Knuth at University of Albany. He co-authored a paper with Robert Powell and Peter Reale of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies and studied very carefully not just that case, but several similar cases, and came to the conclusion that even with errors and uncertainties, that there were speeds and accelerations that were just not possible technologically. And many other researchers have also used the software produced by people like Mick West, who does a very good job and does expose a lot of problems, but I don't think he's right about this situation. There are other researchers besides those I just named, like there's Yannick Pengs and Marek von Rennenkampf, who have published articles very respectfully and carefully addressing points of skeptics like Mick West that they have raised rightfully and been able to show that you can't explain it away as, airplane, jets, or known technology.
And is it just the Nimitz Tic Tac video, or do you think other videos could be for real as well?
Yeah, I think it's not just the Nimitz Tic Tac, but also the Go Fast and the gimbal. And these are often conflated. They happen different years, different locations, but these are all separate incidences that all on their own are separately compelling, especially when you consider how during congressional hearings, it has been stated that they're not explained. And so it seems strange to me that one or two skeptics or debunkers would be able to know better than, all of the government scientists or scientists hired by the government or asked by the government. That just is possible, but that seems unlikely to me.
Yeah. All right. And Miguel, you've got this new book out. It's called Evidence of the Extraordinary. It's out today, exploring UFOs using evidence-based analysis. Give me the 10-second elevator pitch. What's evidence-based analysis, and something that, there's a great debate and argument over whether or not it exists?
It's just approaching, the book is based on one of the shows that I've produced for the History Channel for years that, puts all these videos through the ringer with experts like credentialed and wonderful physicist Matthew Zhadagas, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for years. And basically the premise of the book is just that the traditional understanding of any number of things has been disrupted, and the game has changed so many times that in general we need to be more hospitable to radical hypotheses because they happen.
Yeah, you don't have to believe everything and be gullible, but you can also question everything and not just take as verbatim and gospel the latest statement from our government. Matthew Zhadagas, Miguel Sancho, thank you both so much.
I don't think all of the alleged cluster of missing and dead scientists are linked. I'm very sceptical of the Daily Mail claims, but I do think there are individual cases that do raise, I think, legitimate suspicions that should be being investigated, and Amy's case is one of them. Frank Milburn is a very good friend of mine. He's a former British paratrooper and former very respected British military intelligence officer who is very well informed. Frank, way back when Amy died on the 11th of June in 2022, shared with me the communications that he was having with Amy Eskridge. And in fact, I'd been in touch with Amy Eskridge well before her death, her tragic death, and she was making claims that she'd had a major breakthrough in anti-gravity. Not surprisingly, she was very secretive about that, but I'm in no doubt at all, and this is the reason why I think legitimate suspicions are raised. Amy did say, if you hear any reports that I killed myself, it's not true. It just didn't happen. And she was, I do believe, showing very credible evidence that there were some kinds of injuries on her body. I've seen those videos. I've seen the photographs. I was shown them shortly after her death, and Frank has briefed me extensively on them. The difficulty we have, and I think this is the way that it's been played, I think, by the local police. The county police didn't call for a full coronial inquiry. Amy's body apparently was cremated very shortly after her death, her tragic death. The ruling was suicide, a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but there are questions. For example, there was an allegation, I don't know if this is true, this is why it needs to be investigated, that the weapon was found near the hand that wasn't the hand she used to shoot a weapon. There were claims that I heard from people in the area that she was heard yelling and shouting shortly before her death. And also there's a voluminous quantity of videos where she herself described being allegedly attacked with directed energy weapons, as you've reported. I do think it's important to investigate this, but I don't know how we're going to investigate it when all of the forensic evidence has apparently been lost, or not lost, but since destroyed.
Well, there's a lot of attention right now. The FBI is on top of this as well. I just had to ask you, assuming for a moment we take a step back, let's assume something nefarious happened here. What did she know that was such a danger? I mean, researching anti-gravity technology, speaking out about UFOs. What information did she have in her possession that was unique, that could be revealed, that could potentially make her a risk?
Okay, I know this sounds to many of the viewers like a crazy conspiracy theory, but I'm on record as saying that I know from my own sources, including David Grush, that dreadful threats, intimidation, bullying, attempted murder, and even murder has allegedly been perpetrated on people who've tried to come forward with evidence of what we believe is a secret UAP, non-human technology retrieval and reverse engineering program that's been going on inside the US military and private aerospace for at least 70 years. And I don't doubt for a moment that there are some extremely zealous people who have an over-enhanced sense of their national security obligations who have been willing to threaten, bully, intimidate, and indeed murder people to hide that secret. I don't know if Amy is a result of that secrecy. I don't know if it was suicide or whether it was, for example, was it a tragic mental health episode where she concocted this story that she was under threat? I know some of her work colleagues who were working closely with her believe that that was the case. But it is tragic because what worries me is the authorities have allowed the perception to develop by not doing a proper investigation in the first place. Yeah. That there is something suspicious about this case. I just question whether we're ever going to get an answer. And I suspect the FBI will find what President Trump has intimated, that a lot of these alleged connected deaths turn out to have prosaic explanations.
Right. All right. Well, we will see. You just give us a lot to think about there. I have to process that. Ross Coulthart, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.